All right, ready to dive in. Today, we're tackling rhetoric and persuasion.
Ooh, fascinating stuff.
It really is. And we've got a speech excerpt and a study guide full of rhetorical devices to unpack.
I do.
This stuff is everywhere.
Everywhere.
From political speeches to those ads that follow you around online.
You can't escape it.
Exactly. But by the end of this deep dive,
Yeah,
you'll be able to spot these techniques, analyze arguments, and hey, maybe even become more persuasive yourself.
You know, what's interesting about all this is how often it's working on us subconsciously.
That's true.
We encounter these techniques every day without even realizing it, but when you bring them into the conscious mind, it changes things. It does. You're not just passively taking in information, you're actively engaging with it.
Right. And our study guide glossary throws around terms like pathos, logos, and ethos.
Yep, trifecta.
Honestly, they sound a bit like Greek gods to me.
Well, they kind of are the titans of rhetoric, originating in ancient Greece.
Oh, wow.
Think of them as the foundations of persuasion.
So ethos is all about credibility. It's the ethics appeal.
Ethics, okay.
Then you have pathos, which aims right for the heart. It seeks to stir up emotions.
Pathos, emotion.
And logos, that's the voice of logic,
Yeah.
relying on reason and evidence.
Logos, reason, got it. So let's say you're watching a commercial for a charity.
Okay.
They might show those heart-wrenching images to evoke sympathy. That's pathos at work.
Pathos in action.
Then they'll bring in a respected celebrity to endorse it, boosting their ethos.
Makes sense.
And finally, they hit you with statistics about the problem, a dose of vigor.
Exactly. The trifecta of persuasion right there.
Boom.
And it's not just advertising,
Right.
Political speeches, debates, everyday conversations even. It's all about using these tools to influence how people think and feel.
So are you saying every conversation is a battle for persuasion?
In a way, yes, it's about getting your point across.
Okay, because speaking of speeches, this excerpt we've got today is full of these devices.
For example, there's this line, "The American people are sick and tired of seeing innocent people smeared and guilty people whitewashed."
Powerful stuff.
It really is. It's like they were hitting those emotional buttons.
Absolutely. That's pathos, plain and simple. They're tapping into feelings of anger and injustice to rally support and create this sense of urgency.
Interesting.
And a skilled rhetorician knows how to balance that emotion with logic.
Right.
But sometimes the lines get blurred.
Like in this phrase, "Today we have a Democratic administration which has developed a mania for loose spending and loose programs."
Ah, yes.
They're making a statement, but something feels off about it, almost manipulative.
You're picking up on a crucial point. This is where logical fallacies come in.
Ooh, fallacies, those are tricky.
They can be. They're using loaded language here, mania, loose, to paint this negative picture without concrete evidence.
So they're leading the listener to a conclusion.
Exactly. Persuasion through rhetoric rather than sound reasoning.
So even if I agree with the speaker's overall message, I should still be wary of that kind of language.
Precisely. Critical thinking means looking beyond the surface appeal of rhetoric
I see.
and dissecting the logic regardless of your own political views.
Okay, starting to see how this works. It's like mental chess.
It is.
Now, our glossary also mentions slippery slope and ad hominem.
More fallacies.
Yeah, those sound a bit more, underhanded.
They can be.
They can be.
The slippery slope argues that one small action will lead to, a catastrophe.
Oh, like dominoes.
Yeah, like a domino effect, but without any real proof.
Okay, so no proof.
And ad hominem, that attacks the person making the argument instead of addressing the argument itself.
It's like name calling.
Classic diversion tactic.
So in our speech, this line, "As an American, I want to see our nation recapture the strength and unity it once had when we fought the enemy instead of ourselves." Could that be seen as a slippery slope argument? Because not recapturing that unity doesn't automatically spell doom for the nation, right?
Yeah. You're catching on quickly.
Yeah.
That's a textbook example of a slippery slope.
It is.
It implies a dire consequence without a clear cause and effect relationship.
So they're skipping a few steps in the logic.
Exactly. And remember, these tactics aren't limited to any one political party or ideology.
That's a good point, because speaking of tactics, I'm curious about how pathos can be used in different ways.
Okay.
It's not just about, fear-mongering, right?
Right. Think about how charities use heartwarming stories and images.
Ah, yeah.
That's pathos appealing to our compassion.
To help. to donate.
Exactly, or how a motivational speaker might use uplifting stories and anecdotes to inspire hope and action.
So it's all about understanding the nuances of different emotions.
Yes.
And how they can be used to persuade an audience.
A skilled communicator can evoke a wide range of emotions: joy, sadness, anger, hope.
It's like a whole emotional toolkit.
It is, to connect with the audience on a deeper level.
Make that message hit home.
That's the idea.
That makes sense. It's like a composer using different notes to create like a symphony of emotions.
What's interesting is that sometimes multiple rhetorical devices are used together to create this layered effect.
Okay.
A speaker might combine pathos with strong imagery or metaphors, for example,
To make it more memorable.
to make their message more vivid and memorable. Exactly.
That reminds me of this line from the speech. The Iron Curtain of communism is descending upon the free world.
Ah, yes.
It's not just a statement. It's this powerful image
very powerful.
that evokes fear and a sense of danger.
Exactly. It's a metaphorical iron curtain.
It is.
And by using that imagery, they're tapping into those Cold War anxieties,
Art.
framing the situation as this battle between freedom and oppression.
Wow. This is making me think about how language can be used to shape our perceptions.
It's true.
It's like they're weaving a narrative with words.
And the narrative, yeah.
Using these techniques to guide us towards a specific conclusion.
And that's the power of rhetoric. It's not just about the words themselves, but how those words are arranged, the emotions they evoke, the images they conjure.
Right, the whole package.
The whole package.
I'm starting to see how this can be used ethically or unethically.
Absolutely.
A skilled communicator could use these techniques to inspire positive change,
Right.
but they could also be used to manipulate and mislead.
That's why it's so important to be aware of these techniques
It is.
and to approach persuasive messages with a critical eye.
Don't just take things at face value.
Exactly. Analyze the language, look for evidence, consider the speaker's motivations.
This is like getting a backstage pass to the world of persuasion. Before we dive deeper into the speech, any final thoughts on why this stuff matters?
Rhetoric is everywhere. Understanding these techniques can empower you in countless ways. It can help you analyze arguments, make informed decisions, and even become a more effective communicator yourself.
All right, I'm ready to put on my detective hat and dissect this speech. Stay with us, folks, because the deep dive continues.
All right, let's jump back into this speech.
Sounds good.
There's a line that really stood out to me. But there have been enough proved cases, such as the Amerija case, the Hiss case, the Coplon case, the Gold case, to cause nationwide distrust and strong suspicion.
Yeah, that one definitely jumps out. It feels like they're trying to make a sweeping statement about the entire nation based on just a handful of examples.
Right.
Is there a term for that in our rhetorical toolbox?
Indeed there is. It's called a factual generalization.
Factual generalization.
And as you pointed out, it can be a slippery slope.
Oh, okay.
The speaker is presenting a few specific cases, and we won't get into the details of those here.
Right.
But they're using them as evidence for this much broader claim of nationwide distrust.
But wouldn't you need a lot more than 4 cases to justify that kind of statement?
That's a valid point.
It seems like they're cherry-picking examples
It could seem that way.
to fit their narrative.
And this highlights the importance of critical thinking.
I see.
When you encounter these factual generalizations,
Okay.
always ask yourself, are these examples truly representative
Of the whole?
of the whole? Is there enough evidence to support the broader claim?
Right.
Or is the speaker, are they jumping to a conclusion?
So even if those specific cases are factual, the way they're presented here could be misleading.
Exactly. It's a subtle form of persuasion, but it can be very effective in shaping public opinion.
This reminds me of another term from our glossary, equivocation.
Ah, yeah.
It's about using a word with multiple meanings to subtly mislead the audience.
That's right. You got it. And we see a hint of that in this line. Whether it be a criminal prosecution in court or a character prosecution in the Senate, there is little practical distinction when the life of a person has been ruined.
Okay, I'm not quite seeing the equivocation there.
Okay.
Can you break it down for me?
Sure. Notice how the speaker is equating a criminal prosecution with a character prosecution,
Okay.
suggesting they're essentially the same thing. But in reality, they're very different processes
Huh?
with very different implications.
Oh.
A criminal prosecution involves formal charges, evidence, a legal process.
Mm-hmm.
A character prosecution, as the speaker calls it, is more about damaging someone's reputation.
Ah, I see.
So they're blurring those lines.
Yeah.
They're downplaying the seriousness of a criminal prosecution
Yeah.
and making a character prosecution seem just as damaging.
So it's all about the word choice.
Precisely. And that's how equivocation works. It subtly shifts the meaning
Wow.
to create a desired effect.
That's like a linguistic sleight of hand.
Very much so.
Okay, we've talked a lot about pathos and ethos.
Right?
What about logos, the
Mhm.
appeal to logic and reason?
Mm-hmm.
Any examples of that in the speech?
Let's consider this line again. Today we have a Democratic administration which has developed a mania for loose spending and loose programs.
Okay.
On the surface, it might seem like a logical argument.
But I sense there's more to it.
But, as we discussed earlier, it relies heavily on loaded language.
It does.
Words like mania and loose are designed to trigger
A reaction.
a negative emotional response rather than present a clear argument.
So it's disguised as logos, but it's really more about stirring up emotions.
Exactly.
Clever.
It's a common tactic in persuasive rhetoric, packaging emotional appeals in a way that appears logical.
It's sneaky.
It can be.
Speaking of packaging, let's unpack a few more of these rhetorical devices.
Okay.
We've got asyndeton and polysyndeton, who actually sound incredibly complex.
They might sound intimidating, but they're actually quite straightforward.
Okay, good.
Asyndeton is simply the omission of conjunctions in a list.
Conjunctions like and, but, or.
Exactly. It creates a rapid, energetic feel.
Okay.
Think of the famous line, Veni, vidi, vici.
Oh, right.
I came, I saw, I conquered. The lack of and gives it that powerful impact.
Now that makes sense. You can practically feel the momentum building.
Precisely. Now, polysyndeton is the opposite. Opposite.
It's the deliberate use of many conjunctions,
Okay.
creating a sense of abundance, overwhelming force.
Abundance, okay.
I think I see an example of that in the speech. I speak as a Republican. I speak as a woman. I speak as a United States Senator. I speak as an American.
Oh, yeah.
The repetition of and really hammers home those different roles.
It does. It's like they're saying, listen to me, I'm speaking from all these different perspectives, so you know I'm serious.
Exactly. And these techniques, while subtle, can have a profound impact on how we perceive a message.
This is making me realize that paying attention to the structure and rhythm of language can reveal a lot about the speaker's intentions. It's like they're using a secret code to influence us.
And that's the beauty of this deep dive.
Ah, I like that.
Cracking that code together. By understanding these techniques, you could become a more informed listener.
No matter what the message is.
No matter what the message is.
Back again for the final round.
Ready for more. Oh yeah, I feel like my brain is doing bicep curls after all that.
Ah.
Rhetorical weightlifting. Ready to tackle some quiz questions.
Absolutely. Let's see what we've learned.
Okay, this one caught my eye. Identify and explain the logical fallacy present in the following statement. The American people are sick and tired of being afraid to speak their minds, lest they be politically smeared as communists or fascists by their opponents.
Interesting.
It sounds persuasive at first, but I'm sensing a crack in the foundation.
You're right on the money. This statement is a prime example of the ad populum fallacy.
Ad populum, okay.
Also known as the bandwagon effect.
Oh, right, the bandwagon.
It argues that something must be true.
Because
many people believe it.
Ah, so just because a lot of people are sick and tired
doesn't mean they're being silenced.
So it's like saying, everyone loves this new phone, so it must be amazing.
Exactly. Popularity doesn't equal truth.
It doesn't.
It's a tactic used everywhere. Advertising, politics, even everyday conversations.
Wow. To sway opinions without real evidence.
Without solid evidence, yes.
This is making me realize how easily we can fall for these fallacies.
It's true.
If we're not paying close attention.
It's like they're mental traps disguised as persuasive language.
They are.
That's why those critical thinking skills are so important.
They are.
Always ask yourself, is this claim backed up? Or is it just appealing to my emotions, to popular sentiment?
Okay, good advice. Let's move on to another quiz question.
Right.
This one focuses on ethos. How does the speech employ ethos? Explain the intended effect on the audience. We touched on ethos earlier, but
let's dive deeper.
Let's see how it plays out here.
Remember, ethos is all about credibility and trust.
Right.
In the speech, the speaker achieves this by identifying themselves in several ways.
Oh, how's that?
As a Republican, a woman, a United States senator, and an American.
Right, so they're hitting all those points,
Trying to connect with the audience on multiple levels.
showing they understand their values
Exactly.
and experiences.
By highlighting these facets of their identity,
Okay.
they aim to build trust, rapport with the audience.
Makes sense, and it seems particularly strategic to emphasize their identity as a woman
Interesting point.
in a political landscape that's, well, historically been dominated by men.
Absolutely. By highlighting that aspect,
Right.
they're likely trying to appeal to a wider audience,
Women especially.
particularly women who might feel underrepresented.
It's fascinating how ethos goes beyond just listing your credentials,
It does.
It's about strategically crafting your persona
It is.
to resonate with the people you want to persuade.
That's a great observation.
It is.
It's about establishing a connection,
Right.
building trust, which are crucial for effective persuasion.
Okay, let's wrap up with one final question
Okay.
that ties everything together. Explain the concept of a slippery slope fallacy. How does the provided example from the speech illustrate this fallacy? We've danced around this, but let's give it a proper send-off.
A proper send-off.
Yeah.
Remember, a slippery slope fallacy claims that a small action will inevitably lead to a series of increasingly negative consequences
Oh, right, like a chain reaction.
without providing solid evidence for that chain of events.
Right, because the example from the speech, as an American, I want to see our nation recapture the strength and unity it once had when we fought the enemy instead of ourselves.
Yeah.
That perfectly illustrates this.
Right, it says.
It's like they're saying if we don't recapture that past unity, we're doomed to some national catastrophe.
But that feels like a giant leap in logic.
It does, doesn't it?
It's a classic slippery slope.
It is.
The speaker is presenting a worst-case scenario
In worst case, right?
without demonstrating a clear cause-and-effect relationship.
So, are they just trying to scare people?
It's almost like a fear tactic.
It is.
Designed to make people think if we don't do this one thing, everything will fall apart.
Wow, this deep dive has truly been an eye-opening journey into the world of rhetoric and persuasion.
Uh-huh.
I feel like I've gained a superpower.
A superpower.
Yeah, the ability to decode persuasive language
I like that.
and see through those sneaky tactics.
And remember, rhetoric is a tool.
It is.
It can be used for good or for ill.
Right.
The key is to be aware of the techniques
To be aware.
and to approach all persuasive messages with a healthy dose of skepticism.
So as you navigate the world, remember to question everything, look for evidence, and don't be afraid to challenge assumptions.
Well said.
That's how you become an informed
And inform.
and empowered listener.
And never underestimate the power of your own voice.
Oh, that's good.
And your ability to persuade others for positive change.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive
My pleasure.
into the fascinating world of rhetoric and persuasion. Keep those minds sharp and those critical thinking skills honed.